about cybersecurity insurance.
Very carefully. As with all insurance, right? So let me give you the examples of what happens in other areas. So let's talk about before the Affordable Care Act went into place. Insurance plans could give you health insurance that wouldn't cover hospitalization. And so you would think most people who buy health insurance would think, if I get sick and I went to the hospital, I get covered. But there were lots of insurance plans that did not cover that, or emergency room services. And people assume that they did because that's why they're buying health insurance. So if you don't read through, the 25 pages of fine print, you wouldn't know that. There's been cases where, an insurance company might, for example, cover certain things that you thought were covered, but because it was caused by something else, it's not. So just in terms of cybersecurity, I think you just have to be very careful about exactly what the contract says. But I'm not opposed to it. I think it could be a really good idea. It just depends on how the insurance is written and whether it, in fact, will actually protect you if something bad were to happen. That's it.
So we hear a lot of different issues associated with cybersecurity. So what do you think is a bigger impact to smaller businesses? The concern around ransomware and how we can protect ourselves there, or identity theft? It seems like both of them are really topical issues.
Yeah, especially the identity theft.
So there's a saying in cybersecurity, right, that there's only two kinds of entities: those that have been hacked and know it, and those that have been hacked and don't know it. So I think it's simply a matter of time before a company gets hacked. I think ransomware is definitely a problem. It has spiked dramatically. Identity theft is not sort of as much a business issue as more a personal issue. Right? They'll, try to get information about you, and then they can steal things from you, whether it's credit cards or so on. The reason you'd be concerned about identity theft as a business is because the employee gets compromised, and then someone else is entering your system who is not actually your employee. So that's why a business would be concerned about identity theft. But I would think right now ransomware is probably the biggest problem businesses face, because that's just a direct attack on you, asking you for money if you don't, unlock, or if you don't pay them to unlock the files. Yes.
So if somebody from a foreign country does a ransomware against you, they somehow find out who it is, but what's the recourse there? Because they're in a different country. Do we have any kind of recourse?
That is a great question. It's something we're trying to figure out. So all of you may have remembered when Sony got attacked, and the media reports have now publicly said that North Korea did it. So now the question is, well, how do you respond? How does Sony respond to a foreign government? What does the United States do? We had so I had a classified briefing last year that Will Hurd set up, and the topic of classified briefing was called Digital Acts of War. So I can't tell you what was said in there, but we're trying to figure this out. It is a brand new area now, where if you have foreign governments attacking private sector companies through cybersecurity or through cyber attacks, what is that? What do you call that? How do you get remedies? One thing that did happen is last year, President Obama and Xi Jinping of China signed a cybersecurity agreement where they agreed that both countries
Obama signed a cybersecurity agreement with China? No wonder we're getting hacked.
One of the reasons that happened is because China also realized, since they're sort of growing at a pretty rapid pace, a lot of their companies are developing trade secrets, intellectual property. They also don't want their companies to have that stolen as well. So this was actually sort of a win-win for both countries, where both countries said, okay, we understand that intellectual property is important, and companies' data is important, and we're just not going to go after them as a matter of our governments doing that. But that is a great question. I think we're still trying to figure out how to solve it. Yes, sir.
With the recent spike in ransomware, as we've been talking about here, especially with the recent crypto locker epidemic, what areas have you seen in terms of small businesses been most affected? Because I understand it's mostly like hospitals and these larger corporations that are getting affected by these sorts of things. But in terms of small businesses, what areas, what fields are most susceptible to this sort of thing?
The Democratic National Committee.
That's a great question. So that's why we're working on, actually we did a letter last year, but we're working on sending another letter to the Department of Justice and the FBI asking them exactly.
They can send a letter to the Department of Justice, but they won't do anything about Kevin DeLeon.
My sense is if you have data and files that you cannot live without for a matter of a few days, then you're susceptible. So, you know, I would just highly recommend keeping a separate copy in a place that hackers probably won't be able to find. So with that, thank you so much. Oh.